So first up today, we have enabling and monetizing communities. So although I am hosting you today, I'm going to pass over to my next host, Sophie Ahmed from Clipper, and you are going to introduce us and then ask us lots of questions. Okay, I will go do that. Right, I will sort out his microphone as well, but Sophie, if you want to go ahead and introduce the session, and look forward to speaking with you all. Thank you very much. Is it not going? No, it's not. Yeah. I'll ask him.
Hello. So whilst we're waiting for my mic to be switched on, I'll stand here. So welcome everyone. Very excited to be here.
Try it.
Hello?
Yeah. Testing, testing. No, it should be fine. It should be on.
Okay, so it's on. So excited to be here with everyone today, talking around enabling and monetizing communities, which, as we know, is a really, really hot topic right now, and has been discussed for many years, but I think it took COVID to get people to really pay attention to it. So I'm really excited to be joined by some great speakers today. Humphrey Chen, co-founder and CEO of Clipper. Tim Groot, the founder and CEO of Grip. And Matt Coyne, the co-founder of Twigged and digital director of Raccoon Events. So please do ask your questions as well through the Glisser app if you have access to that, and we'll be taking those shortly. But we're going to kick off with, everyone's talking about communities right now. But I'm going to start with you, Humphrey. What do you think are the biggest benefits to working towards a 365 community for events and also, therefore, exhibitors and visitors?
Yeah, when I look at recorded video, I see tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of video, which actually have a lot of trap potential. And so what Clipper does is we actually literally index it using machine learning. We make it searchable. We generate an automated table of contents. And if only 5% of that video matters, we want that attendee to find that 5%. And if there's another 5% they didn't know they needed to know, we want them to find that 5% as well. And so if they get 10% engagement out of that recorded video, that's actually mission accomplished because it's actually 10% more than normal, and it also means that they avoided having to go through 90% of the video. So for us, we literally view that content that's been recorded, and you spend so much money on building, and as soon as the event is done, it's trapped and it's stuck. And so what we do is unleash that potential.
Okay, thank you, Humphrey. I think, as you've mentioned, engagement is, of course, massively important towards building a community, but it's also something that communities do well as well. So moving on to Tim, how can, engagement through communities lead to greater success for exhibitors?
It's a great question. Thank you, Sophie, and great to be here. Thanks, everyone. So I think that as we were kind of talking about, I think that communities are just a kind of a fundamental way moving forward in order to make sure that you place yourself at the center of the industries that you're serving. So I think if you look at, for example, Event Tech Live with events industry news and everything that Adam Perry and the team are doing around that, it's fundamentally allowing them and enabling them to play a much more central role within an industry. And I think that it enables them, therefore, to provide much more value to the exhibitors. There's more avenues that they can monetize that community through content online, the podcast, the webinars and everything that they do, and then kind of drive more traffic to the events that, as you see here today. So I think it's really that 365 community, or this kind of year-round engagement that is enabling them to increase traffic and therefore monetize that more effectively to their moments in time that are online as well as that are happening here in person.
Yeah, I mean, communities do definitely create more customer touch points, don't they? And really keep momentum alive for any event brand. So, Matt, do you think that communities do effectively work as a funnel to attract more people to the physical events such as today?
Yeah, 100%. And I think maybe I've got some recent examples from what we were doing at Raccoon Events. So we had the first two shows in September and October for them. The first one's back for a very long time. And a lot of people, I guess, not sure of coming back, also unsure of the content and what's happening. So we were recording a lot of behind-the-scenes interviews with a lot of the speakers, and it was almost the, like, you know, the FOMO, it was the fear of missing out part of it, right? But we had a lot of these kind of behind-the-scenes, so it's a little bit extra to what was presented on stage and in person, but it gives people a little bit of a tease of actually this is the sort of content that you're missing out on, and if you come, you're going to see the full presentation or the full insight or whatever it is they might be sharing. So, I mean, that's just one part of the funnel, right? But if you're kind of giving them a bit of a lead as to what has happened and what might be happening next, I think 100%.
So Matt, when you see this happen, you see, you know, there's multiple customer touch points, it's funneling people towards the event brand overall. Do you see then there's opportunities to monetize that? Do you see new revenue streams emerging because of these new opportunities? You know, what's the new inventory emerging, and how is technology supporting that?
Yeah, I mean, the briefcase of tricks that we could have is enormous. I mean, it would definitely be excess baggage, I think, if you wanted to carry it all, but I think it's really focusing and doing some of those parts well. If you're sort of spreading yourself too thinly across too many different possible digital opportunities, you're going to get very small returns in each part. I mean, for us, we kind of very much look at, obviously, the data side and what we can do with that, how we can analyze it, how we can monetize it, but also how we can compete against traditional media opportunities. Because we're getting the in-person, face-to-face aspect, but then we're also understanding what those people are doing, what they're engaging with, what they're seeing for the rest of the year. So, you know, you've got data. We see a huge part in video. It's a consumer business, and so we're, you know, creating from documentaries to interviews to regular YouTube content, I guess. That's another huge part. And then you look at things like e-commerce and merchandise. I mean, they have a huge following, for example, in their own run show, so just selling that merchandise, let alone all the, say, books or products from a lot of exhibitors as well. So we can extend the life for the exhibitors for the year round, but then we're also going almost direct to the customer as well. So there's a plethora of ways to do it. It's just sort of making sure you sort of knuckle down and focus on what your community wants.
And Tim, I know you've done a lot around exhibitor success as well. So linking on from that, do you see organisers using this increased analytics and information as an upsell piece, or do you see it more as a value add, or do you see a bit of both?
I think it's very similar to what Matt is saying, and I think that, you know, it's about creating very powerful revenue streams. I don't think you want to kind of create a plethora of different things that you all try and kind of have all these little upsells. I think it's much more powerful if you can just increase your rebookings with 5% for your in-person event, right? And drive an extra 20% conversion from online registrations to in-person participation of your events, right? Like, I think those are some really key fundamental metrics that you want to try and push. And in order to do that, you need to make sure that you're enabling exhibitors to achieve their objectives more successfully. And I think that if you can give greater insight into the content that you are creating for exhibitors and for the community, and how that is actually converting into leads and contacts and meetings for exhibitors, that's fundamentally a hugely important part. So I think that, you know, there is ways that you can monetize just the analytics, but I think that it's much more interesting to look at how can we provide greater insight to the exhibitor to really affect that rebook rate and that overall success that they get from participating in the events.
Definitely. I mean, I think back to my days of organising events, mostly at Informa, and our analytics in those days, you know, we used to pull them manually to try and understand what was going on and pre-reg conversion and all of that. So what we have today, I think, is just a godsend for any event organiser. I think analytics are something that will, used well, create, as you say, indirect and direct revenue. Humphrey, from your point of view, how do you see analytics really, you know, enhancing communities and event brands and creating revenue streams?
Yeah, I've actually recently come up with a framework which I call BRRS, B-R-R-S, which I guess works out nicely for Rachel at Snowball. But basically what BRRS is bookmark, react, re-engage, and share. And so each of those 4 different elements ends up being things that we can do with the content. And so we actually launched sharing yesterday, which actually helps out social media network effects, because one of the things that people had been asking us for a long time was, hey, like, we don't want to keep this a secret. We want to get the word out, and that helps the re-engagement to occur. And then what also happens here is that when we actually create these metrics, we actually end up getting insight that actually turns into leads. These are actually sellable things. They're monetizable things, because when someone is actually really interested in the content and they like it enough to share it and they like it enough to bookmark it, it says something about their view of that data. And so we're providing them the tools to allow that, that network effect to occur, which allows for stuff to grow on its own.
Yeah, I mean, I got to say, I've always been obsessed with the network effect. It's massively underutilized. So I think the way technology is going and the way people can share and amplify more is so important to really increase, your TAM. So within that, content, of course, being able to share content is incredible. How do you, Humphrey, how would you suggest people can increase the afterlife of their content and really make sure that all this amazing content is used throughout the year and not just forgotten about?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of like where, like for Clipper, our goal has been to make all everyday content bingeable and snackable. And so when you make it bingeable and snackable, it's basically the Netflix engine. And so when people react to that content, it actually informs what you like and what you don't like, and what you watch ends up telling us and the event organizers what you prefer as well.
And using that information about who's reading what, who's watching what, Tim, how do you think an event organizer can go about creating a personalized UX with this information that we're now getting? How can they create that personalized UX?
Yeah, I think that you're probably going to announce what we're doing together at some point, so I'll leave it to you. But so I think that organizers over the last 18 months have created hundreds of thousands of hours of content on Grip alone. And that content has a certain lifetime value. And I think that once you've produced all of it, and this session is recorded, it has a certain lifespan. And I think that if you can find clever ways to extend that lifespan of that content and make it valuable for a longer period of time, that's fundamentally what, in my opinion, Clipper is doing. And if you can do that, that means that you can create more value for your community because you've got more interesting content to share with them for a longer period of time by providing it in a more personalized experience. So in the end, a community is going to come down to, can you service the information to people and the relationships and the things that they're interested in the time that they want them? And so I think that fundamentally it starts at a very high level with that, can I find here what I'm looking for? And then it goes all the way down to actually, hey, I want to be part of this community. I want to participate in it. I want to, feel involved in it. So it's all these different layers that kind of draw people further into this kind of onion of engagement, basically. And I think that's really the way that I look at it. And it all starts with content at the top of the funnel. So yeah, the better you can do that, the more successful you're going to be downstream, I think, as well.
Yeah, and to speak more on our strategic partnership between Clipper and Grip, basically, we originally were focused on the post-event experience. And the post-event experience basically said, hey, once your video is all done, you can engage, you can personalize, you can search, you can bookmark, you can do all these reactions. But then what we also realized is that there's a synchronous theater. And so when people are actually in the middle of an event, we can actually create a streaming player. And so yesterday, we finished Simul Live for Grip. And so what Simul Live means is that it actually simulates live. It allows for the audience to react through emojis, and that reaction and emoji persists in the post-asynchronous theater. And so the powerful thing about that is normally what happens is that you're in the real-time theater and all the engagement occurs and then it's all gone. And now it actually, what happens is, one thing that's worth calling out is 60 to 70% of keynotes end up being pre-recorded. And so we can actually receive that content, we can actually pre-enrich it, we can expose it, but we don't want people to be distracted by the topics. But as soon as it's done, we flip the player and everyone can actually search it and engage with it. And so the conversation can seamlessly begin and continue all 365. And so it's actually a really powerful concept. And so we've designed that Simul Live player to be as modular as possible so that if people have chats, if they have reactions that are different from our reactions, we can actually interoperate with those as well. And so it allows for like really a lot of valuable data that today ends up getting lost.
Yeah, I really like this idea of real-time engagement, but also continued engagement throughout the year, and I think technology can certainly deliver that now. And being able to share that and the real emotions about what you feel about content at a specific time is incredible. Matt, from your experience, have you seen this happen in terms of engagement being lived throughout the year, being shared throughout the year, and do you believe communities will enhance engagement? It's sort of like engagement enhances community, community enhances engagement, right? So. And community.
Again, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to seeing this later, by the way. I think it sounds amazing, and it is just what we need. When you've been sat through virtual for so long, when you're presenting, it's incredibly hard to get any form of reaction, right, unless you've got the chat open. So, I'm really excited to see that. That's great. But for the community and how we engage, you've obviously got the kind of session type content like this that we can record, we can chop up, and we can keep spreading throughout the year. But for us, it's also incredibly important on the shows to create ambassadors that become your network. They get T-shirts, they get discounts, they get free stuff. So they're massively involved in resharing what we do whenever we do it. But also from the content side, we've created contributing editors. So currently it's free. One day I'd love to pay them. But again, it's to give them more exposure. They're creating content direct from the community to us. So we know it's something that at least one person's interested in. But typically if that one person's interested in it, so is another network of people. So we've already got about 30 to 40, I think, that are regularly producing content for us in their own tone of voice. So it becomes very personal. But then that reaches out year round. Obviously we have particular calendar dates of things we need to focus on, but it reaches out year round to the rest of the community, and because it's personal, it's not the brand speaking, they're more likely to engage with it on a personal level.
Exactly, getting your community to advocate for you is of course much stronger than you telling why your brand or your event's amazing. So really creating ambassadors, isn't it? Humphrey, what do you think about this whole community ambassador and how you can enhance and increase the advocacy and network effect?
Yeah, for us, it's all about giving them the tools to basically share what they want to share. And so when it becomes a virtuous cycle when someone actually reacts favorably to it. And so we're looking, the social sharing that we have right now, V1 includes all the major social platforms, but we are looking at having a setting that will actually allow it so that when someone actually is speaking at an event, and if they claim their profile with Clipper on LinkedIn and someone reacts to it, we want them to get notified that that reaction occurs. And so that means that now you go well past the fact that a reaction here in this room or online has a limited reach, but if it goes in through social, it actually goes much further. And so this kind of, again, it's like a deeper than normal integration, which is not easy to do, but it's something that we're aspiring to do.
Definitely. It's so important. I'm thinking about networking as well. Of course, there's two reasons why people come to an event, and there's two reasons why people join a community. And I know within community, a lot of it is about belonging, and it's quite tribal, isn't it? So, I'm thinking how can we use technology to enhance this sense of belonging, this tribal feeling? Because essentially, there's so much competition, there's so much noise out there. To Matt's point, it's people really advocating it through their own voice, and this tribal feeling of people FOMO and all of that. So how can we use technology to enhance that?
Yeah. Good question.
Is Zuckerberg in the audience?
I'd love to add something to that, actually. So, I think that, Sophie, you said it very well, right? A community is about a sense of belonging. And if you walk in here today and you see so many faces they haven't seen for, almost 2 years, I think fundamentally, when you give somebody a hug or, give them a fist bump, you're like, hey, we are part of this community. This is my tribe. These are my people. And that's what community is. It's about emotions. It's about feelings. And fundamentally, that's what, I can go to an event 5 years ago, Slush, in Helsinki, and I met a good friend of mine there, through Grip, which was great. And we're still friends. And so now fundamentally, every time that I see that person, in the back of your mind, subconsciously, you have a warm feeling associated with Slush, which is the event. And I think fundamentally that's very, very powerful. And that's why events are such a great builder of community, because it's about creating a sense of belonging through the emotions associated with the people that you met there. And so if you can bring that into the virtual world, you know, like the Zuckerberg metaverse, I guess, is what his ambition is there, but fundamentally it's about trying to get a glimpse of that emotional feeling through whether it's interactions with content and bringing that over and carrying that over into the online world, but it's all about creating a sense of belonging through emotions, and that's what builds community. That's what it's all about.
And the one thing that we've done to actually help that community feeling is that the reactions through emojis, which we call blooms, I mean, those are little things, but it actually creates a community. And so for us, the blooms that our team has designed are set up so that it feels like a little bit of a game, so that when someone is like clapping or hearts, it actually like explodes and it feels like a little firework, and it actually just turns into a little delight. And so when you're all remote, like we're happy to get as little, you know, as much delight as we can from these little kinds of things.
Well, I think, Sophie, as well, sorry, there's, I mean, I guess pertinent to this and to ETL, there is a group of us sort of close friends in the whole event tech space, and you've possibly seen it on social of EWD, and I know some of them are here. But there is a small group of people that we got really close together before this, but then also helped each other through this whole last 2 years. And whenever we see the little EWD thing anywhere, we're kind of immediately hopping on to support, to like, to share, to make sure that then like our own little community is being shared. I think the bit like, so that for us is a micro community. Dahlia, who's in the back hall, she talks about those micro communities all the time. And I think the bit that I'm intrigued to find out about a bit more myself today, but is how we actually engage those micro communities that are already doing a lot of activity to promote or talk about your event, but bringing that somehow into the main event. That's what I'd really love to learn more about.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's such a great point. I think like there is so much opportunity, if we talk about personalization, to enable more people to find those micro communities, to highlight them to each other. So it's like, it's not just about one-to-one interactions, it's about like the Granovetter's transivity model, which is like, you know, the stronger the connection between two, like if I know Humphrey and Humphrey knows Sophie, and like then at some point we're going to meet. And it's about creating those type of triangulations in order to strengthen those micro communities, because that's what enables then, you know, for people to feel connected to the overall one. And I think that's really, really important. In the end, it all just comes down to strong individual relationships between people.
Definitely, and you know, these micro communities, I always think, you know, before 10 years ago or so, you'd always find certain people at the same bar. You know, I used to say, that's your micro community there. But of course, you know, with technology, there's better ways of identifying it. But equally the same feeling, you know, that belonging and that FOMO, and how you can sort of bring it all together, Tim, so it's less siloed. And I think, you know, technology is certainly going to help that. I think, Humphrey, what you were mentioning as well about the emojis, and being able to share that, and share that real time, also share it throughout the year, also creates a belonging and a sense of an affinity, and also you know what your mates are watching and what your mates are suggesting, so yeah. To Matt's point as well. So, but when you look at community, I know, Tim, from your point of view in terms of networking, you know, how are you seeing networking 365 evolve?
Well, for that, we first have to decide what networking actually is. And I think fundamentally it's about two people having a synchronous interaction. Like, I would struggle to call, for example, sending somebody a LinkedIn message networking necessarily. So I believe it's about a synchronous interaction between a group of individuals. And I think that that is something, therefore, that is best done at specific moments, planned moments in time, whether that is virtually or in person. But I think it's really important that you create those moments of connection. So you can do them all year round, but you have to plan them. You can't just say like, hey, go to this online space and, you know, you can just connect all year round. That sounds great, but I think fundamentally, if you look at some of the key drivers of networking, you need to make sure that you're creating those moments for people to come together. An event, the word itself means it's a moment in time, and I think that's you need to create more moments in time for people to connect and engage. Of course, you can do that in combination with a year-round presence for content and top-of-funnel engagement, but I think you need to convert it into moments of connection, and that's what networking is about for me, at least.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting, isn't it? I've got my own questions, but now I've realised there's some questions coming in from the audience, which I'm going to move to. So the first one, which is, how do you keep engagement alive in a 365 environment for both sponsors and visitors? So between the events, Humphrey.
Yeah, so I think one model that I've seen work is like Viz at like Texi Talk actually drives promotions to reward people for re-engaging with the content. And so people love Amazon gift cards. People love, Sony PlayStation cards and all sorts of gifts. And so something as simple as that actually works. And so if you get rewarded for, engaging with the data, you end up learning about the data. And then when you learn more of specific things, you end up learning even more. And so basically, in a way, like there's a bit of a flywheel effect that needs to start. And so someone needs to start and encourage that. Because right now, what typically happens is when the event is done, it's done. It's like, let's like plan the next event. But for us, we're all focused on the in-between event and building that community and encouraging and rewarding that re-engagement. And yep.
Just to add to that, so from the consumer side, like we're actually looking at how we reward our editors to start with, like so the contributors to it. And we're trying to build a platform now, like not only when they submit something and it gets approved and it goes out, they start to earn points, and obviously points mean prizes. Tim recommended me a great book on gamification, which is where I got this idea from. So we're kind of building up on that, but also kind of crucially, if the content is getting great views and whatever shares and reads and time on pages and all that kind of stuff, we can reward them even more. So we're trying to build that in to get the contributors engaged heavily, because again, the network effect, we know that they're going to spread more the more that they're engaged.
Totally. I remember when I was working on Money 2020, we were using I won't say who it was, one technology provider, where we could really see who the biggest advocates were. So we would then go to them and incentivize them to do even more, and you want sort of the senior advocates, don't you? But for the kudos, but you also want the more junior for the volume. So yeah, it's a fascinating thing how it's moving so quickly. There's another question come in, and it said, what does BRRS stand for again?
Bookmark, react, re-engage, and share.
If someone could write that down for me, that would be great.
So bookmark, react, re-engage, share.
Yeah, it's just in time for winter. It's going to get a little cold and chilly.
So another question. Do you think event organizers will now be able to access a much larger global universe through communities, through technology? We'll start with you, Humphrey.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that we actually wanted to announce today is that we want to make Clipper available for free for event organizers, so that literally anybody can upload their content into Clipper, get it indexed, and make it searchable, make it bookmarkable, make it personalizable, and in a way, like you can also put it on your own website. And for customers that are actually grip customers together, we can do deeper than normal integration around how you want that, how you want that to play out, because we're actually having a pretty extensive roadmap around advanced analytics, and that'll keep getting more and more value added. But in the meantime, like we wanted to encourage everybody to just upload Clipper into clipper.ai, because it's a free account, and work with our partnerships team, partnerships at clipper.ai, and our team is here to help you customize things or integrate things more deeply than normal. But you can actually use it out of the box just from the site itself.
I think to add to that, right, like I saw a stat somewhere, it's like 40% of people that were attending virtual events by organizers in the last 18 months hadn't participated in an in-person event before that. So, they addressed a big number of new people. I think that the big question is going to be, A, are those people going to convert to in-person attendees or exhibitors at some point? And B, is that needed? Like, is it fine if somebody just purely engages with you virtually? And if so, does that in some way reinforce the strength of the community, so you don't really need to convert them? Or if you don't convert them, can you monetize them, you know, purely online? So like, I think that those are some of the key questions around that you can reach more people. Obviously, like, you know, it's online, so you can reach the entire world. The question is, you know, is that something that is worth doing? And so I think that, you know, I'm talking later about hybrid as a strategy, not a sticky note, and I think that's really at the core of it. You can start doing online stuff, but you need to understand how it's contributing to your overall strategy. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Definitely, and the whole, you know, diversity and inclusion side of things, you know, more people are getting involved in events that hadn't previously, and as you say, Tim, even if they don't come to the physical event, there are ways that, you know, they're certainly going to keep sponsors happy, you know, that they're going to be there more and more, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think also look at ETL as an example, right? I know Adam wanted ETL to launch in America, or has certainly been discussing launching in America for a very long time. And this year he had the first virtual version of ETL US, and next year he's got the first version of the in-person US. So for him, actually, it was, I say, affordable. You know, launching events in the US is an expensive business, definitely compared to Europe. So it kind of gave a flavor of, is the audience there? Is the audience interested? Do we have something? Yes, we do. Okay, now we're going to go and launch. So I think you can test markets in the regions digitally way easier than launching live.
Yeah, I mean, the barrier to entry is totally diminished, isn't it? I mean, you know, 2-3 years ago, if we were going to launch a show at Informa, we'd have to put a lot of money up front to reserve a venue, get the contractors in, without even realising if we were going to get the revenue in, so it was high risk. So now you can do it in a much better way. Someone's just asked, Matt, what is the name of the gamification book?
I know it. So it's called Gamification Beyond Points and Badges, and it's by Yuval Choi, I think. It's a great book on gamification, and another good book on the topic of community is actually a book called Hooked by Nir Eyal, which is fundamentally about how do you kind of create behavior that people have an internal trigger to start kind of interacting with your platform rather than constantly requiring emails and notifications and everything to, so what is the very fundamental itch that you're satisfying? So that's another very good book.
Oh, great. Well, that's really useful. Well, I've just been told, I think we've got just under 5 minutes left, so I'm going to go with the last question. There may be a second last, but definitely this is the last, if not. So we're all moving towards this very much Netflixization, aren't we, with on-demand content. How do we see this evolving, you know, in a year from now, 2 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm imagining that everyday video, not only events video, but everyday video in work can actually be bingeable, and people can actually, you know, sign up for personalized highlight reels. Because today what ends up happening is that the video consumption experience is so out of date. When someone sends you a URL, it's the last thing you want to go and do to watch it. And so that's where we come into play. And so we end up making the stuff snackable. We end up learning from what other people want, and then we also end up evolving and changing it. And so the algorithms end up kicking in to actually better personalize it. And so, you know, imagine like you go to a conference like here, and so when you sign up for your interests, normally you get spam from vendors servicing in the AI category. Imagine you get an AI, you know, you end up getting a personalized highlight reel for all the AI moments from the conference itself. And so new ways to serve the content can actually be possible, because like for Clipper, we've been very much focused on making everyday video accessible for the masses. And so that's kind of the orientation that we have in terms of like making it easier to use. Because let's face it, the video player hasn't changed in 20 years. It's play plus 10 minus 10. And so when we end up identifying moments and subtopics, it ends up being like 50% of the moments. And then when we find out other types of moments from people, like aha moments or hiring moments or key customer, you know, customer buying moments. So all those kind of moments end up being things that are part of our longer term roadmap.
Great. So we now have 2 minutes left. So I'm going to ask Tim and Matt in 1 minute answers. Where do you see, well, we're focusing on communities here. So where do you see communities in a year from now for both of you?
Yeah, for me, it's I'm definitely working on the content creation side of stuff. So I want to see how we can really engage and reward people that are contributing to our platforms and our brands better. I think at the minute it's kind of you get a logo or you get a picture up or something like that, but it's like I actually want to reward them. I want to get to a stage where we can pay them for what comes through. But yeah, I really want to see how we can better engage with them and reward them for the time and effort they've put into us.
So I think that fundamentally we're going to a transition from organizers being in a single person kind of value chain. So like they only delivered value to a community through in-person events. Currently we're seeing it kind of being split in a multi-channel experience where we see in-person happening, virtual, and then hybrid being seen as a channel. And I think that the next step is really a sort of multi-channel experience where we're starting to see people looking across all these different channels and really bringing them together into one data, kind of overall data place and one engagement place. And I think that that's really the big transition that we're going to see over the coming period. It's this transition from how value is created by an organizer, by a kind of community catalyst, how that's captured, where it's placed, and then how it's monetized.
Yeah, for us, like we want to, be all about lighting up the long tail, because until Clipper, people didn't even know this was possible. So like once you realize it's possible, then you're like, oh, I need this. So you actually need to upload stuff to actually see your own content in it in order to make it actually relevant. And once you see it relevant, then that's at the point that you can actually start sharing the stuff and encouraging and rewarding the engagement. And so for us, like what we need your help in is to really kind of grow these communities, because you own those communities as organizers. And so we're providing you the tech and the tools, but that's just one piece of the equation.
Definitely. Mindset is key. I'm sure we're going to be told, I think we've hit our time, so there's a lot to unpack here. I don't think I can really summarize it in a few seconds, but I think ultimately what we're saying is, communities, increase customer touch points, keep content alive, keep the community alive, create FOMO, you get to a wider target addressable market, you make more money, so what is there not to like about it? So, the next couple of years is very exciting, so thank you all for your time today. It's been fascinating to have this opportunity to talk with you.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you. Have a great event, everyone. Thank you.